So Amazon's Lord of the Rings of Power is back in the news, and it's a TV show that for some reason just won't leave the news cycle, even though season 2 is not coming out till probably next year, or hell, at this point, maybe even the year after that if we're lucky. But season 2 of Rings of Power is in everybody's discussions right now. The reason being is because season 1 was such a mega flop for Amazon, the likes of which they just will never admit. They just won't, okay? If you're expecting Amazon to admit how much of a fail the season 1 was, they're never going to, okay? They loved touting the 20 plus million viewer number that they swore they had, even though it wasn't 20 plus million viewers. It was more so 20 plus million samples, which is totally different, mind you. But again, these studios are going to want to put out whatever number makes them look the best. But now we have an article from Bounding Into Comics that goes into something from the Hollywood Reporter, which says that the Prime Video's of Lord of the Rings of Power, has lost 63% of its domestic audience. That's to say that most people didn't even finish the series by the time it got towards the end. That is a massive number drop off. The fact that almost 70% of your viewership never finished the actual season is crazy to me. It goes to show that most of the people who were watching it in the first couple episodes were just hate watchers, and they were talking about the show and they were talking about how terrible it is, and most people did not finish it at all. But let's see what this article has to say. So it says a new rumor claims that Prime's videos of Lord of the Rings of Power saw much of its initial audience completely tune out of the series and never even finish all of the episodes. Guys, before we continue on the article, please consider giving this video a like. It really will help me fight the YouTube suppression that I am facing currently every single day. It says this new rumor comes from the Hollywood Reporter's Kim Masters, who claims sources confirmed that the Rings of Power had a 37% domestic completion rate, customers who watched the entire series. Masters adds overseas it reached 45%, a 50% completion rate would be solid but not spectacular result according to insiders. According to Nielsen, the Lord of the Rings of Power raked in over 1.253 billion minutes viewed in North America when the series' first 2 episodes were released on September 1st, 2022. Following the release of the show's 3rd episode, the minutes viewed decreased to 1.203 billion minutes viewed. In its 3rd week, the show's minutes viewed declined even further to 988 million minutes viewed. It is god-awful how bad the Rings of Power performed, considering the amount of money that went into this TV show. As you guys are aware, this had the biggest budget of any TV show ever. It was that large, to the point where it was setting records. And ultimately, it just ended in complete disappointment for Amazon. It was so bad, to the point where, again, they stopped talking about their viewership numbers after the first 2 episodes. Why? Obvious reasons. It's the same reason why Velma to this day has never released their viewership numbers, and they will never do so. It says the downward trend continued in the show's 4th week when it declined to 977 million minutes. The 5th week fell to 966 million minutes. The show did see a bump following the release of its final episode. The show raked in 1.137 billion minutes. Now that's obviously because the last episode had the reveal of Sauron, where everybody wanted to see just how bad they were going to mess that up. Plus, a lot of YouTubers were watching it over and over and over again to kind of go over the episode and do reviews on it and stuff. I was one of those people. So again, there was a lot of people involved in that, but ultimately this show just was so pathetically bad. It's going to go down in history as one of the biggest flops ever, not just for TV, but just in general. It is absolutely that bad. And honestly, I can't wait for season 2. I cannot wait because it gave me a big boost on my channel, so I'm looking forward to the next one. You know what I'm saying? I'm just being honest with you guys. It says the week following the show's season finale, its minutes viewed significantly declined to 570 million minutes viewed. The series completely fell off Nielsen's top 10 charts in the next week with minutes viewed below 354 million. That's bad. That's really bad. That means it came and went like the wind. And that's exactly what we were saying was going to happen with the Rings of Power. That it was going to come and go like the wind. It was going to be completely forgettable. Unlike Tolkien's original works with the Lord of the Rings, which is timeless and never forgotten, this particular TV show was going to just be content that was going to be consumed and spit out and never thought about ever again. And that's exactly what happened to it. Rings of Power has never been mentioned unless there's like an article coming out about it. Otherwise, nobody talked about it. Nobody nobody is building communities around it. Nobody is building theories around it. Literally, nobody's talking about this TV show in any sort of positive limelight. This show is surrounded by negativity, and it always will be surrounded by negativity, and that's what it deserves. It deserves to have that surrounding it, because that show was an insult to anybody who knows Tolkien's lore. Even if you don't know Tolkien's lore from the books, you could still consider it an insult if you were a fan of the initial movies. This made the Hobbit movies look fantastic in comparison, you know what I'm saying? So it says, to put the decline that Masters is reporting in perspective, the first season of Batwoman lost 60% of its premiere audience in its first season. TV series finale reports Batwoman had 1.86 million viewers in the show's premiere. It dropped to 739,000 viewers by season 1 finale. That's a decrease of 60%. Batwoman would eventually be canceled after 3 seasons as its viewership continued to decline. If Masters' sources are accurate, that means The Lord of the Rings of Power had a greater percentage fall than that of Batwoman, and while the percentage fall of it is slightly higher than Batwoman, the actual fall off is probably much higher given Batwoman's viewership peaked at 1.86 million viewers. The first 2 episodes of The Lord of the Rings of Power, as noted above, drew in 1.253 billion minutes viewed. The first episode had a runtime of 65 minutes, while the second episode had a runtime of 67. Thus, if you divide the total minutes viewed as reported by Nielsen by the total runtime of 132 minutes viewed, the show drew in at most around 9.4 million people. Thus, if the show did lose 63% of its audience, that means that just below 6 million people tuned out and only 3.5 million people finished the entire series. That's crazy. That is crazy stuff, man. Think about that for a second. You had a viewership of almost 10 million people. Pretty terrible considering the amount of money that you spent on this TV show, but you know what? Whatever. 10 million people, great. You had a lot of people viewing the TV show in terms of a numerical factor, but ultimately you only ended with 3 million. That means that your TV show was so bad, that it only kept 3 million out of the 10 that you started with. God, that is terrible. That is really, really terrible. And I have so much fun dunking on the Rings of Power because it really just does deserve it. It says, however, despite this report, Amazon revealed in their 4th quarter results for 2022 that The Lord of the Rings of Power attracted more than 100 million viewers worldwide to the first season. They added the series was the most watched Amazon original series in every region of the world, with more than 24 billion minutes streamed. Amazon Studios boss Jennifer Salke also informed Masters this desire to paint the show as anything less than a success is not reflective in any conversation I'm having internally. Well, why would it be? I mean, obviously you guys are not going to consider yourselves a failure. You're going to constantly talk about your own success amongst each other, so why would you think that you're going to have a discussion internally that speaks of anything other than that? You guys will never admit that this show was a failure. The amount of money you spent on this TV show just to perform below average, just to get beat by the House of Dragon, a TV show that spent nowhere near the amount of money that you spent. That goes to show there's enough failure there for you by far, just on that notion alone. So even if your TV show was one of the most viewed shows by far, even though it wasn't, but let's say it was, you still lost to a show that spent nowhere near the amount of money that you did. Nowhere near. And I would argue with a bigger IP, a bigger name, a bigger draw. Lord of the Rings is much bigger than the House of the Dragon, in my opinion. So again, you couldn't even fully succeed with all of that in your favor. You had all the money in the world. You had the best IP in the world, the biggest name in the world, and you still failed. You guys really need to think about where you stand in terms of a studio. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy, and if you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.